Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the offense somehow an issue now too. The Suns lose back-to-back games over the weekend, big ones no less. Jusuf Nurkic ejected, and they missed out on a trade. We'll break all of the weekend in Suns Land Down next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Monday, kick off your week. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Joining me, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling on this Monday? Ben Garcia.
You hit it all. That couldn't have been a better intro. I'm okay, man. Being an Arizona sports fan is it is not for the lighthearted. It's been tough. And I haven't seen you in a little bit, so I hope you're well, but for now I'm okay.
I would say I'm okay as well. The Suns scored 105 on Saturday. They scored 89 at home against the Mavs on Friday. We'll talk about those games, including the biggest headline out of those games, which was Yusuf Nurkic. I said ejected. I should just say suspended. We already know the punishment here. 3 games. He's served one of them already. And to make matters even worse this weekend, the Lakers... Yes, literally, the Lakers, of all teams, stole Dorian Finney-Smith out from under the Suns' noses. So we'll close with that news. But first, the offense, Ben. So, look, let me just start by saying, I know the defense is still the biggest issue, right? I get that. And we kind of talked coming off of that Christmas game of, could that element of the team at least be something that they lean into and try to embrace as long as Book is out and they have to play guys like Okogie and Monte Morris and Ryan Dunn a little bit more. But we all know this team is going to live and die by how it scores the basketball. And so they are 9th in the NBA in offense, which might surprise some people to hear. That's higher than I would guess. That's where they finished last season. It feels uglier than last season, but obviously... that includes some stretches of different guys being in the lineup and everything. But they're 16th, basically middle of the pack over the past 2 weeks. And I understand it's a back-to-back against good teams, but putting up a combined 194 in big games on your calendar, coming off of a big Christmas Day win with Durant and Beal both in there, it's just not good enough. And it kind of makes me be willing to ignore the defense even as that continues to struggle, because if they can't score, nothing else matters. They have to be a great offense with how this team is built, Ben.
That's not even a hot take, Brendon. We talked about this in the preseason, and this is where I would just ask you very candidly and quickly, hey, Brendon, is the 9th best offense in the NBA going to cut it for this team?
No, and the other thing is, I guess the place that the defense does kind of matter here is that because so far the defense has been even worse, the offense has to be even better. So, no, it's not good enough.
It has to be a top 5 offense, and it feels like they've gotten away from everything, man. We have talked about this ad nauseum, and you had said something that I broke out the other day for social media, and you had said the only consistent thing about this team is that they're pretty inconsistent. We don't know what we're going to get on a night in, night out basis. And last night I felt like, again, was the epitome of what the Suns have been. And again, with the Dallas series. And the biggest thing defensively is everyone just looks lost. And the worst part of it is the center position defensively. Mason Plumlee looks lost. Oso Ighodaro is probably the best defender, but even at times he looks lost, but he's a rookie, so I'm not going to go after him too much. And Yusuf Nurkic, man, if the NBA really wanted to, and I was the Nurkic defender at the start of the year, so I feel like it's okay for me to come around on this. If the NBA really wanted to punish the Suns, they should have just not suspended Nurkic, because him being on the floor at this point, I don't know what he's adding to this team. And I don't think the guy's washed. I don't think that's how it works, but last year he was asked to kind of be the de facto point guard at times and pass the ball really effectively. But around the rim, he's been awful. Defensively, he's been awful. He has become Drew Eubanks and Landry Shamet. Like the Suns community has collectively come together, and I think that's where the biggest issue lies, man, is this center position defensively. Rotations, they look lost. We're defending Daniel Gafford at the three-point line. There is literally no intriguing quality or no saving grace from these centers. And you know what, man? I was kind of against you that this could be the reason why the Suns don't win a championship. I am starting to really come around. Well, of course, championship, but even be viable in the playoffs is how bad they are defensively at the center position. I don't know what you would point to, but that's what I would point to.
Yeah, I mean, look, the defense inside has been a massive issue. I think the defense all over the place has been a massive issue. But on the offensive end, and we will come back to the center spot because I think it'll come up as we discuss, obviously, Nurkic's suspension, but even the trade. But the offense, what's crazy to me about it is the issues are the same as last season. Rim pressure, turnovers, and everything in the fourth quarter. We're right back to pulling our hair out about exactly the same things all over again. They're now just +4 overall in fourth quarters. So remember, we were tracking that. They were amazing to start the season. Now they're +4 is not terrible. It's obviously nowhere near as bad as they were last season, but it is middle of the pack. It's just average, and they collapsed against Golden State in that fourth quarter because they could not score the ball. They are the 21st ranked fourth quarter offense in terms of efficiency per 100 possessions this season. And that's the full season. So that includes early on. 21st fourth quarter offense in the league. And recently, those turnovers, which we thought were, in bits and pieces, they've been managed. In other games, less so. It's been very up and down, but I think we kind of figured they could live with it. They can't, and it's getting worse. 14 or more turnovers in 11 of the past 14 games. And Kevin Durant appears to be, allergic to the ball lately. He can't keep it. And it's just, that's, I think, what's so exhausting about it. We talked about it with the injuries and the effort and all that, how that feels like deja vu. How are they the same? How are they struggling in the same ways on offense with such a different roster when you talk about the point guards, more shooting, more depth? It's crazy to me.
So let me ask you, I have two questions, but you kind of went to how are they doing this? I'll answer your question with a question because I'm curious what you think. Who do you think deserves the most blame this whole season? Because Booker has played as well during this stretch without Kevin Durant at times. Who do you think holds the most blame for the Suns' offensive woes, especially recently? Is there a singular player or is it everyone?
I mean, I think it's the two guys that you mentioned. It's Durant and Booker. I mean, I think that they have been, and I'm not even going to try
How dare you go after Durant? How dare you?
I'm not even going to try to pick nits in, like, of course, if you, and this is kind of what I said last year with both of them at different points too, where statistically and everything, it's hard to say, oh, they're having a down season. Like, you can't look at the numbers and really make that argument. But if you watch this team, the biggest reason I point the finger at those two guys isn't because, when you've been the only star on the court, we needed to see 50 out of you and you only gave 40. Like, I'm not, that's a ridiculous way to put it. They are not playing the style of team offensive basketball that the coach wants from them and that the other players fit into. They are taking the offense hostage far too often, and that is where you see inefficient games. That is where you see, lifeless basketball, and that is where you see these turnovers crop up, is that everybody is on a different page, and the only page that ends up mattering is the page those two guys are on, especially when they're not both on the court together. When it's just one of them with Beal or one of them with the role players, the offense ceases to exist. There isn't an offense. It's just them playing basketball with four other guys out there, and that's why you see a lot of these issues cropping up.
Yeah, so Brendon, I've given you what I think my solution is. I think we've got to make drastic changes to the offense. I think that means Beal to the bench. I think that means Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neal getting bigger offensively, running this offense way more through Tyus Jones and just being more decisive with the basketball. Have you thought that far into it? What would you do at this point? Are you hitting the panic button, ready for not panic button, but are you ready for drastic changes offensively? And not just personnel, not just trading for someone, with the guys that you have.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, when I put the blame predominantly on those two guys, the fix we've all circled around the most is Beal going to the bench. Are we positive that that fixes the issues that we're seeing right now? Because again, and this is kind of what I was throwing at you and Eric on Thursday's show is like, or Friday's show, I guess, like Beal's playing well right now, and he's kind of doing what we've wanted to see him do. Not every possession all through. I understand he has his own issues. I'm not trying to turn it into a Beal conversation, but if you're telling me put that guy on the bench and all this looks better, I just don't. I think we might be looking at deeper issues than even that would solve. And I think you pointed out some of what could fix it, but I don't have an answer. One thing I will say when it comes to those two guys, and I want to throw this quote in here really quick before we jump to the Nurkic side of it. Durant said he's not going to let a few turnovers late in the clock affect his flow and affect his aggressiveness with the ball in his hands. He should not be initiating offense. I don't care. I'm overhearing all the arguments from his fans, from him, from the coaching staff. It's not working. I know no one likes the I told you so guy, but one of the biggest problems, like issues that I ran into with KD stands when the season last year was going on was that I was hammering KD for these turnovers early in the season. And I backed off because it was only him healthy. The numbers didn't fully prove what I was trying to say, which is that, he's not going to the rim as much. He's not drawing fouls and he turns it over. So what's the use of him driving the ball to the basket so much? But I think we've seen it enough. It's basically a season and a half now. I'm willing to come back to that argument, and it's not working. Him dribbling the ball, running pick and roll 35 feet from the basket in his mid-30s is not what the offense should look like. That is one thing that even if, of course he has to be out there. He's a legendary player. He's been awesome this season overall. But in terms of how they play with him, it can't be like that because he's just piling up these turnovers and he's not it's not worth it because the end result is still a mid-range jumper a lot of the time, right?
I'm firmly on your side. Because I've learned doing this with you that there is a huge community of Kevin Durant fans that really just come after you no matter what you have to praise him no matter what you do. If not, then you don't deserve him. You don't deserve to be graced by his glory. 1000% with you. Kevin Durant has been turning the ball over at a really bad clip recently. He cannot be initiating the offense. I agree. I don't want to just sit here and echo everything you just said, but know that I am here with you. Kevin Durant has been more of a problem the last couple of games than the solution. And when you're turning the ball over that many times, I don't care about how many points you have. You can't do that. Then you become Jeremy Lin when you're dropping 35 points and 9 turnovers during his insanity run. Like, that's the issue. So I agree with you. I 1000% agree with you. So, brace for impact.
All right, let's jump to Yusuf Nurkic, who let it all out on the court with, an altercation that was pretty ugly. Maybe just feeling what we're all feeling, but unfortunately, when you're a player, you don't get to do that. We'll get there next. First, today's show brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Well, Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for ED at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation and get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can also get 40% off that first order when you use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's ROCKETRX.com code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. Locked On Suns Daily Newsletter is me this week, so you will get all of my thoughts in written form on the newsletter, in addition to national analysis, Suns news, NBA news, fantasy advice, and the latest episodes of the show all packaged up in one place. Best of all, it's free and you support the show. So go to lockedondaily.com to sign up and get that email into your inbox each and every day. Okay, Ben, so Yusuf Nurkic, I don't even fully still have a read on exactly why it spilled over the way that it did. Gets called for a foul in the second half of the Mavs game. He's walking away. It was an offensive foul. He's walking away, clearly frustrated. It was like the third goofy, ridiculous turnover or errant shot that he had chucked up in a stretch, and then the foul makes it worse. And he turns around and he heads back toward Najee Marshall, Kyrie Irving, and PJ Washington, who are kind of clustered up underneath the basket. Some things are said. Nurk throws the first. It wasn't even. It wasn't even a slap or a punch. Ben, is it? Could we call it a paw? He pawed Najee Marshall. Like he just used his whole hand.
It's the classic NBA. What am I saying? It's the classic NBA fake tough guy thing, man. It's when people say like they need bouncers or you need a tough guy on your team. There has not been a tough guy in the NBA since the early to late 90s, because what we're seeing, Najee Marshall connected on a punch that was, I mean, anyone would have survived with no issues. And everyone's like, oh man, this guy's got street cred now. Here's the problem with the Yusuf Nurkic thing is, this guy, he's starting to wear thin, I think, not only with the fan base, but I think also with the players, man. There was really no one that backed him up, where PJ Washington was ready to scrap it. And I think that's very telling immediately with this guy,
right,
where
Najee Marshall throws a punch back, and then PJ Washington pushes Nurk to the ground. And yeah, you're right. I didn't really look at it that way, but there wasn't this whole Suns group that kind of, ran back. And then you look at the Mavs quotes afterward and they're like, we loved what Najee and PJ did. No one was even saying that afterward.
Did you see Ryan Dunn's quote after the game?
I did. What part of it are you talking about?
Ryan Dunn was asked if he thought about helping Yusuf Nurkic in a fight with Najee Marshall. This is from Gerald Bourguet. He says his response was, I'm a rookie. I don't get enough to be getting fined $5,000, so I can't throw a punch.
Yeah, not throw a punch, but Ryan,
if you're fighting with your guy, man,
the main guy who I feel like at least said he said we stand with Nurk, whereas honestly, not a lot of other people even did that. You can't do what the entire fan base did, which was. Good job. Our entire fan base was cheering on Najee Marshall for punching our dude in the face. Yusuf Nurkic is starting to run a course that I feel like Jay Crowder went through. Now, Jay Crowder was much more beloved than Yusuf Nurkic ever was, but Crowder, towards the end, we were all kind of done with Jay Crowder, right? It was fun. We remember some of the good times with Crowder, but at times, we remember the not showing up. We remember him getting upset because Cam Johnson was going to start, chucking up threes, the kind of fake tough guy act that Jay Crowder did. We like Jay. I think Jay's significantly tougher than a lot of guys in the league.
That's not saying much in the NBA. That's not saying much in the NBA, man. I just don't. I don't take any NBA players seriously.
I'm comparing him to the other guys in the NBA.
I guess that's fair. I guess that's
fair.
NFL, this isn't Jay Crowder. I like Jay Crowder. Listen, I liked Jay Crowder. I have nothing against Jay Crowder, but towards the end, he was starting to run his course. Yusuf Nurkic is starting to speed run that course. Where I was hesitant to just ship him out of town, but send the guy to Alcatraz, man. Send the guy to the moon. I'm so over it. I can't deal with the softness at the rim. That felt like a breaking point for him, where he doesn't fit here. He's upset with his role. He's still shooting threes because he's been asked to do so. Defensively, he's a net negative. This team is just better when they go small. Find out what you can get for Nurkic and packaging some picks and see what you can do. But I think the guy's just ran his course, man. I mean, he is a net negative. And honestly, him getting suspended was probably a good thing for the Suns team, because I think they're going to see something better over the next couple of games.
Until Zach Edey comes and Godzilla is across this whole thing on Tuesday night.
That is Tuesday, isn't it? That is Tuesday night.
But look, yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I just think the downside of that all being true is the whole his value couldn't be lower, right? The whole league is seeing all of this come crashing down as well.
Was it ever high? Like, was
I would
it
say
ever
going
high?
into the playoffs last year, yes. I think that he had a very solid regular season relative
Okay.
to expectation. I think a lot of us thought he was like a, injury risk, fit question. He hasn't been on a good team in a while in Portland. Like, is this guy going to just be a minus from the jump? And he had a strong regular season. He fell apart in the playoffs. He's been, pretty huge negative ever since. But that's where I think it's going to come back to bite them, is like there is no hope of convincing another team that they're getting a player. Right
Yeah,
now,
I kind of
You
disagree.
know?
I kind of disagree because I mean, D'Angelo Russell was just traded today, man. What value does
Yeah, but he's
D'Angelo Russell have on the team?
expiring.
Is he expiring? All right. Well, that
Like,
does
if you're
obviously.
trading Nurkic to somebody, they got to think like he could at least be on our team and not kill us for a little bit, even if you're a bad team, right? Like, Brooklyn, like you're saying, you got to at least be able to say like, hey, we're sending him your way and you can just make do. And I don't know if you can say that if he's gotten hit in the face twice by the new year in back-to-back seasons. I understand the Draymond thing was different, but like no one else can say that. That's insane.
I'm sorry. You're talking about not seeing it like that. I guess I didn't see it like that either. He has been punched in the face. I guess the Draymond one was kind of a slap, but twice before. Yeah. Listen, man, I don't think that I think his trade value, sure, if you want to say it was higher going into the playoffs last year, I guess I would somewhat agree with that. I don't think it's wrong, but I don't necessarily think it changes anything now because you were always going to have to attach picks to Yusuf Nurkic, maybe 3 second rounders, maybe a first rounder.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not really worried about that. I just want to send the guy to Alcatraz because I've done
I guess my
best.
thing is like maybe this makes it that even because like we're not talking about sending Nurkic to another team just to dump him. You're doing that as part of hopefully getting something in return. And we've kind of all debated like how good of a return would that even be. Maybe what I'm saying is like this new low coupled with, obviously I echo everything you're saying about his performance on the court this year, is like this situation now is so bad that maybe teams won't even take what the Suns have if they're having to actually give something. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just no. Maybe the answer is just absolutely not now. Whereas before we were kind of holding out hope. Maybe there's some construction that could end up panning out. But I mean, you're not wrong that it was going to be a stretch regardless. I just think this is like the final straw.
His contract next year is partially guaranteed too. I still think a team like the Hornets or whatever would take him. What I will say is we will get, when the trade deadline gets closer and it is creeping up, we will get closer into some of the trade targets. But again, doing your tease here, there's a guy that just got traded a couple of moments ago, and there's just not a lot of options out there. So if you're looking for a saving grace, man, mark Dorian Finney-Smith off of your wish list.
Yeah, let's go to that trade where the Lakers made the second big splash of trade season, also with the Nets after Dennis Schroeder went to the Warriors and beat the Suns on Saturday night. But we'll talk about the Lakers package, which was smaller than expected, and whether the Suns were ever in it or should have been, next. All right, closing out the show here. I wasn't expecting a trade like this right away here, Ben, but I think that, the parity and the all-in nature of the NBA these days is teams don't want to wait until February 6th to get some of this stuff done, and the Lakers clearly had a need for this type of player. Their athleticism keeps waning and waning as LeBron's own athleticism wanes, and so they went out and got the job done. They gave up D'Angelo Russell, who we mentioned in that last segment, on an expiring contract. The 40th overall pick from 2023, Maxwell Lewis. Maybe he's something, maybe he's not. And then second-round picks in 2027, 2030, and 2031, I believe I have correct there. And most importantly for us, the Suns did not get Dorian Finney-Smith, who's a player we've all said the name of more than any non-Sun for like a year and a half running now.
So I am such a degenerate when it comes to checking social media, especially X, given the fact that we work in this business and things are changing all the time. I missed the report that you told me about, which was why this trade caught me so off guard this morning when we saw Gambo from 98.7 apparently say that the Suns weren't interested in Dorian Finney-Smith, which is not entirely surprising to me, given the resurgence of Royce O'Neal, given the resurgence of Ryan Dunn in the past couple of games and what they think of him. But I am disappointed, man. It only took 3 second round picks,
before we
basically.
take that as established fact. Part of me wonders if did Gambo get that information because this Lakers deal was coming to a head. You know what I mean? Which is why he may have heard through the grapevine that the Suns weren't in on Finney-Smith, because maybe around the league it was kind of starting to become known that, well, no one's getting him because he's about to go to LA in a day or two. Because the timing of that is pretty weird, that Gambo would come out and say, and again, like I always say with reporting, I'm not thinking his motivations are any kind of way. It's why did he hear that now is more what I'm saying. And I wonder if that's why. What do you think?
It's a better hypothesis than I had, which was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, listen, man, maybe the Suns are just, I don't know, maybe they're realizing that they've made their bed and now they got to lie in it. And they're just like, hey, let's not dig a deeper hole. And hopefully this team figures it out. But if not, we shouldn't give up more resources into this. So that could be true. And it actually does seem more plausible than him hearing it from a source that the Suns aren't interested. So I buy into that.
Well, I mean, like the other thing about your reaction, which we were texting a little bit about, is like they wouldn't. How would they have been digging themselves a bigger hole? 3 second-round picks. I mean, who cares? Like that's not like, oh God,
maybe
crap,
not a much
those, you know, like
maybe not a much deeper hole, but I mean, listen, man, you might be digging it with a spoon, but you're still digging it with a spoon. It does make the hole bigger. And second-round picks and maybe that first rounder as well. We've heard from Gambo as well that they're going to hold on as hard as they can to that 2031 pick. I don't think it means...
definitely, to your point, does start to make you think, like, what are they trying to do? Right? Because all we've heard is what they're not going to do. They're not going to go crazy for Butler yet. They're not going to go, throw the pick out the door. They're not going after the top kind of 3-and-D player that is what we think that they need. So you're right. It does make you scratch your head like, well, okay, when are we going to start to hear some things outside of Butler that they are interested in?
I think it's only going to be something, okay, unless Butler starts to make some significant process, and I feel like we owe our listeners a little bit of an apology. We did that show with Eric Ruby, and then literally 30 minutes later, Miami Heat president Pat Riley decides, hey, we're going to shut all this down, and then who knows? There's things that can still fall there.
More to come there, for sure.
But for now, it's at a pause. Like, let's just put it at a pause for this segment, at least. I don't know what they're going to do.
You also had Jake Fisher on Mark Stein's newsletter report that the thing that keeps in his words, like the thing that keeps getting overlooked by a lot of the reporting around Butler and everything is the Heat adamantly do not and probably will not take Bradley Beal. He put that in no, he didn't mince his words there. And so that makes it a 3-team and everything. So it's like, that doesn't feel close to just kind of compound what you're saying. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if we're looking at what maybe this does tell us is to couple it with kind of the through line of this whole show, maybe the center spot is just where their focus is right now.
Is that wrong?
Let
me ask you this. Is that wrong? Do you think that's more of an issue than wing depth?
I mean, I think it just changes what the team is depending on which direction they go, right? So you could convince me that a Finney-Smith deal, even if it meant giving up Grayson, for instance, I could buy that version of the team where now you're rolling out Dunn, O'Neal, who we haven't even mentioned is hurt now, by the way. We forgot to talk about that in the segments about the actual basketball that got played here. He rolled an ankle. He left the game on Saturday night in a walking boot, apparently, according to Dwayne Rankin. So
it's not a good sign. Not a good sign, man.
But separately, then you would be like, Dunn, O'Neal, Finney-Smith, Durant, Booker, Beal, and you're starting to be, a little bit more like the kinds of teams that have won championships lately, right? Wing heavy,
Yeah.
Small ball, whatever, versatile. You still have to play centers, but you're less reliant on them. You could also tell me that they get a center and they play the way that they've been playing, but they just upgrade their worst spot and they get better. So, like, I could be talked into either one, but maybe this just tells us they see the center thing being such a black hole as, hey, if we can just flip that into going from even like negative to neutral, we'll be back where we want to be. I don't know if that's. I think that they really need to upgrade that spot if they're going to be a better team and kind of click. But I don't know. What do you think?
I've got a last question for you. Has it become, because we went through the names on a previous podcast, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and I was looking through the centers. Is it Nick Richards or bust? Has it become Nick Richards or bust?
There's players better than Nick Richards, so I would definitely wouldn't say it's Nick Richards or bust.
I'm talking about the center position though.
No, I'm saying there's better centers. I mean, we did our favorite non Jimmy trades, and I said Robert Williams. So I still think he would be better.
Man.
I still think that.
I cannot do. I know we talked about this, but
let me keep going. It's not just him.
Yeah.
Goga Bitadze is a player that I know Suns fans have talked a lot about. I think he's better. Than
you're right.
Richards.
You're right.
I think Wendell Carter also on the Magic. I think Larry Nance on the Hawks. He's more of a small ball center, but he could be somebody. So no, definitely not Nick Richards or bust. Isaiah Stewart, but there's not a lot of them. You're right. There's definitely not like 30 centers that pick from. But if you can go out and get one of those guys, maybe the thinking would be you don't give up quite as much because it's just a backup center type player and. Maybe they believe that that's all that they really need to flip this thing around, but that's betting a lot on a not very good player at the end of the day,
I lied to you. I have one more question. Do you think, because now I think that it's become increasingly more likely that they're not going to trade that 2031 pick unless something really becomes of value, but are they really just playing with 3 second-round picks and either Grayson, Nurkic, or really just Grayson and Nurkic to upgrade their position? Maybe a Kogi, I know, but maybe a Kogi. I don't really lump him into that, but sure, Okogie. Those 3 and 3 second-round picks. Are you pretty much working with that?
I mean, yeah, it's basically where they were last deadline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was 4 seconds in the minimum guys.
Yeah, I guess they did have a pick to trade last year with Ryan Dunn, their first rounder for this year. So yeah, I guess we're in the same spot we were last year.
They couldn't trade that. So
you can't trade till draft night. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So it was basically seconds and role players, and maybe it's a little better this year because Grayson is a better player than any of those guys. So if he's on the table, maybe it helps a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they got Royce, and that was pretty solid business. I would say, the other thing to throw in, like, I know it's not super meaningful, but I think like there will be a conversation to be had eventually about could they get something for Monte Morris or maybe not high percentage, but Tyus Jones if they really wanted to get crazy.
Don't. We're not talking that. I get one thing to veto. You are clearly the boss of this show. I know my role. I am second in command. When you are gone, sure. But here's what we'll say. I get one thing that I'm making up right now that I can veto all year. We are not trading Tyus Jones. I'm vetoing that conversation.
Okay.
I will
then
use
Monte.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not trading Tyus Jones.
Maybe if they can get picks for Monte, then they maybe have, 1 or 2 more. But that's, again, it's not really going to change the grand scheme of things here. So, yeah, I don't know.
I just want to shut down that conversation.
Fair. I don't really want to have it either, so I don't blame you. But, yeah, maybe we just kind of like talked ourselves into where this whole thing is right now. And I don't think you can really blame them for holding on to the pick or, the young players or not wanting to blow this whole thing up when they're where they are. I don't think they're like, going to just paralyze themselves and just accept their fate or something. But I don't think it's crazy to say we there's only so far of all in that we're willing to go if I'm Matt HP or James Jones.
Here's one thing, and then, we can close it out if you want. But what I would say is, this team is not blowing it up in the middle of the season. You might feel that way emotionally. You might be upset. They're not blowing it up. Now, I do think there is a scenario where they don't dig themselves a deeper hole. Now, a deeper hole, maybe you're digging that hole with the spoon with those 3 second-round picks. But I think there is a possibility that might be a thing where they don't make any moves. A very small possibility, but a possibility. They're not blowing it up. So let's just jump out of that conversation.
Yeah,
It's not happening.
like I'll just answer it quickly and I'll explain why. It's because they're even if it got so bleak, let's say they don't win a game until the deadline. Absolutely worst case. It's not going to happen, but let's say
It
right?
might.
Like
It might. It freaking
last
might,
year's
man.
Pistons level of bad, right? They're still going to get better offers for all three of the big three in a hypothetical world where they're entertaining any of that in the offseason because there's more people who can do it, and trades like that don't happen in season. That's why it was so crazy that the Suns got KD in the first place. It just does not happen. So if you're talking about ever trading those guys, you're just going to do it in the summer because more teams would bid on it and more picks are available and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, plus you can't do 1.5 seasons with such a big. They're paying their coach tons of money. They got 3 superstars. Like, you got to at least just try it, right? So, I agree with you.
Agreed.
All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, subscribe if you have not already. We'll be with you throughout the week. Grizzlies, and then another big break. I don't understand the Suns' schedule, but here we are. We'll talk about the hoops. We'll talk about the news, and we'll be here for you to, grieve as well. Enjoy your Monday, and we'll catch you next time.